Welcome to Bookish Mind, Season 2. In this episode, we break down Chapter 9 of Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich, titled Persistence, the Sustained Effort to Riches. Hill teaches us that persistence is the power that transforms desire into its financial equivalent step by determined step. So yeah, we're really diving deep into this specific chapter today. We want to understand what Hill actually means by persistence, why he calls it the eighth essential step towards, getting rich, and maybe most importantly, how he thinks you can actually build this quality.
That's right. And it's not just a quick summary. We're really trying to unpack Hill's thinking here, because persistence for Hill isn't just something you passively have.
Right.
It's active. It's sustained effort. It's like deliberately applying your will, your energy to take a desire, turn it into a real plan, and then make it happen. Especially, the financial side, which is the book's focus.
So it's the bridge between just wanting something and actually having it, built step by step.
Exactly. Step by determined step, as you said in the intro.
Yeah. Okay. So let's really get into this. Persistence, step 8 toward riches. Why there? What's its fundamental nature, according to Hill?
Well, his definition is key. He calls it the sustained effort necessary to induce faith. Think about that phrase, induce faith.
Oh, induce faith. Yeah.
It suggests it's not just being stubborn, right? It's about acting in a way that actually builds your own belief, your belief that you can do it. And maybe even builds faith that, the universe or infinite intelligence, as he calls it later, might actually back you up.
Okay.
It's the force that takes desire and willpower, which he says when you combine them, they're just irresistible and keeps them moving forward continuously. It's like the muscle behind your intention.
And Hill notices something interesting, doesn't he, about people who are really persistent, especially the wealthy ones. He says they often get seen as, cold-blooded or ruthless.
Yeah, he brings that up. And he thinks it's not because they lack feelings or empathy. It's more about their intense, unwavering focus.
Yeah.
See, people who aren't persistent, they often look at the world through a lens of compromise, right? Or giving in when things get tough. So when they meet someone who just didn't give in, who stays locked onto their goal with this incredible intensity, it can feel, impersonal, maybe even harsh.
Right.
But Hill's argument is it's not personal. It's just pure, directed energy. Their willpower, their persistence, all aimed at one objective. They don't get easily sidetracked. And that kind of single-mindedness, it can be misunderstood.
He brings up Henry Ford, right, as a prime example. Ford, with his vision for the Model T, the assembly line, relentless. Hill suggests that Ford's public image, being seen as maybe cold or difficult, came exactly from that quality.
Exactly.
His habit of just seeing every plan through no matter what anyone said or did. It wasn't about being mean, it was just persistence and action. Unbreakable.
Precisely. And this leads to a really important contrast Hill makes. He looks around and sees, the vast majority of people. They're quick to just abandon their goals. First sign of trouble, first bit of opposition, they fold.
Yeah, that sounds familiar.
But then you have the rare few. The Fords, the Carnegies, the Rockefellers, Edisons.
Yeah.
They keep going, even with huge setbacks.
Yeah.
Until they get there. And that quality persistence, that's what sets them apart.
It sounds almost like a secret weapon. Hill says there might not be anything particularly heroic about the word itself, but the quality is, fundamental. He uses this amazing analogy, doesn't he? Persistence is to character what carbon is to steel.
That's such a great way to put it.
Yeah.
Carbon, just the right amount, turns soft iron into hard steel, makes it incredibly strong, resilient, able to take immense pressure without breaking.
Right.
Persistence does the same thing for your character. It's not just an add-on. It fundamentally changes your makeup. Makes you strong enough to hold firm when others would just break under the pressure.
So if getting wealthy, in Hill's view, means applying all 13 of his principles, where does persistence fit into that picture? Is it just step 8?
That's a really key point. No, it's not just step 8 you check off. Think of it more like the engine. It drives the application of all the other 12.
Okay.
You can have definite purpose, right? You can have a mastermind group, applied faith, all that.
Yeah.
But if you lack persistence, you won't apply them consistently enough.
Okay.
Or long enough. Or intensely enough to actually get results.
Gotcha.
It's the sustained energy that keeps the whole system running, especially when things get tough and over the long haul.
And Hill suggests you might face your first test of persistence much earlier than you think. He points back to those 6 steps from Chapter 2.
Right. Those steps.
Yeah.
For anyone who doesn't remember, they're basically about defining your money goal really clearly, figuring out what you'll give in return, setting a deadline, making a definite plan, writing it all down, and then reading it aloud twice a day with feeling.
Okay.
And Hill makes this pretty stark observation. He says, out of every 100 people he studied, only about 2 already had both a definite goal and a definite plan when he first met them.
Only 2 out of 100. Wow.
Yeah. The other 98, they were missing one or both. And often, the underlying issue was they lacked the persistence to even create them in the first place, let alone stick with them.
So just your willingness to do those initial 6 steps,
Yeah.
that's already a test.
According to Hill, yes. It's a direct test. Do you have the minimum necessary persistence to even define what you want and make a plan? If you read about it, think, oh, that's interesting, but then you don't actually do it.
You failed the test.
You failed the persistence test right there.
And that failure to act, that lack of follow-through, he says that's a major reason people don't reach their goals.
Absolutely. His experience showed him, he says, that lack of persistence is a weakness most people share. But, and this is the really hopeful part, it's a weakness you can overcome.
Okay, that's good news.
It's not like some fixed part of your personality you're stuck with. It takes effort, sure. But cultivating it is entirely within your power.
So, if it's common, but it can be overcome, how do you actually do it? Hill says the ease, or maybe the difficulty, of conquering this weakness depends entirely on one thing.
Yep, the intensity of your desire.
The intensity of desire.
This is the absolute heart of it. Hill states it flat out. The starting point of all achievement is desire. He uses this powerful image. Weak desires bring weak results. Just like a small fire only gives off a small amount of heat.
Makes sense.
So if you look at yourself and feel, yeah, I like persistence, Hill's prescription is direct. Build a stronger fire under your desires. Make the thing you want so compelling, so vital, so necessary, that the thought of giving up just feels worse than the effort needed to keep going.
He actually challenges the reader, right? He says, after you finish the book, go back to chapter 2 and immediately do those 6 steps.
Yes, immediately. He says the eagerness, or maybe the lack of eagerness you show in following that instruction, that will tell you very accurately just how much you genuinely desire to accumulate money.
And if you find yourself thinking, I'll do it later, or just blowing it off,
then, Hill says, you can be certain you haven't yet developed what he calls money consciousness.
Money consciousness. Okay, that's another one of Hill's key terms. What exactly does he mean by that, and how does it connect to persistence?
It's crucial. His idea is that fortunes, wealth, they tend to flow towards minds that have been prepared to attract them, like tuning a radio, you know. Your mind needs to be tuned to the frequency of wealth attraction.
Yeah.
That prepared state, that's money consciousness. The default state for most people, he argues, the sort of passive state, is poverty consciousness.
Okay.
And poverty consciousness, it just takes over any mind that isn't actively focused on money consciousness. It's like a weed in a garden. It grows easily if you don't tend the soil.
Yeah.
Money consciousness, though, that has to be deliberately created through conscious effort.
And that's where persistence slots in again, right? Without that persistent, deliberate effort, you just stay in that default poverty consciousness mode.
Exactly. Persistence is the engine for cultivating money consciousness. It's the daily, consistent work. Applying the principles day in, day out that rewires your thinking. From that passive poverty mindset to the active wealth attraction mindset. Without persistence, poverty consciousness just wins by default, by inertia.
Hill uses a really vivid analogy for this struggle, doesn't he? To overcome that inertia and build persistence. It's like being in a nightmare.
Yeah, that feeling where you're half awake, you feel like you're suffocating, you can't move, can't cry out.
Totally. That paralysis.
Right. You know you need to move to break free. Hill says you have to do it through persistent effort of willpower.
Yeah.
Maybe at first all you can manage is to move, like one finger. Feels incredibly slow, agonizing.
Yeah.
But you persist, you keep pushing with your will.
Yeah.
And gradually you get control of your hand.
Then arm.
And the other arm. A leg. The other leg.
It's that step-by-step reclaiming of control.
Precisely. And finally, with one last huge persistent effort of will, you snap out of it. You break free completely. Hill applies this directly to breaking mental inertia in life, building persistence.
So the start might be really slow?
It might be incredibly slow,
Yeah.
barely noticeable, like moving that one finger. But by persisting, by keeping up the effort every day, you gradually build speed, build power, and eventually you gain total mastery over your own will, your actions. The big takeaway is, be persistent, no matter how slowly you may at first have to move. With persistence will come success.
So the slow start isn't a sign it's failing, it's just the beginning stage.
It just means you're at the finger-moving stage. Keep going.
Okay, so persistence is a state of mind. It can be cultivated.
Yeah.
Hill gives us actual methods for doing this, right?
He does. He points to a few key things. One is really studying and applying what he teaches in the chapter on power, which is mostly about organizing your mental energy. Another big one is surrounding yourself with a mastermind group.
Ah, the mastermind concept again.
Yes. He really emphasizes how the cooperative effort of a group like that can be incredibly powerful in helping individuals develop persistence. He notes, some people get persistence forced on them by really tough circumstances, by necessity. But a mastermind, that's a proactive way. You build the habit through support, shared goals.
He also connects it to autosuggestion and the subconscious mind chapters. How do those fit in?
The idea there is, through persistent use of techniques like autosuggestion, basically affirming your desire repeatedly with feeling, you impress a really clear, vivid picture of what you want on your subconscious mind.
Okay.
Once that picture is locked into the subconscious, it starts working for you automatically, continuously, even when you're asleep, even when you're not consciously thinking about it. And at that point, Hill suggests lack of persistence isn't such a huge hurdle anymore, because your subconscious is providing that underlying drive.
Which explains why he's so strong on the point that spasmodic or occasional effort is useless. You can't just dabble.
Exactly right. If you only try these things, when you feel motivated, for a few days here and there, it's like planting seeds and then walking away. Nothing happens.
Right.
You have to apply the rules consistently, persistently, until it becomes a fixed habit, an automatic response. That's how you build money consciousness. That's how you get that automatic drive working for you. It's the daily ritual, non-negotiable. That builds the mental muscle.
And then he makes this incredibly strong statement, really hammers it home. There is no substitute for persistence. It cannot be supplanted by any other quality.
That's a huge declaration, isn't it? And it's meant to steel you for the tough times when things get hard, when you're exhausted, discouraged. Hill wants you to remember that. No amount of talent or luck or connections can possibly replace just keeping going. Persistence is the one ingredient you absolutely cannot skip if you want significant achievement.
He even says that people who cultivate the habit of persistence have a kind of insurance against failure. What does he mean by that?
Yeah, it's a great phrase. It doesn't mean they won't ever fail or face setbacks. They absolutely will. Probably many times.
Okay.
But because they have that ingrained habit of persistence, defeat is only ever temporary for them. They might get knocked down, maybe multiple times, but they will get back up. They will keep moving towards their goal until eventually they reach the top. It's not that they never fail, it's that they never stay failed.
Which leads us to this idea Hill has about the persistence test. He suggests life itself, or maybe a hidden guide or infinite intelligence, kind of puts people through discouraging stuff specifically to test this quality.
It's an interesting way to frame it, isn't it? The universe wants to see if you're really serious, if your desire is strong enough before it, aligns things to help you out.
So the test is, can you handle the discouragement?
Pretty much. Those who face defeat pick themselves up, learn the lesson from it, and keep pushing forward. They pass the persistence test. They prove they're worthy of success because they have that one quality that makes it possible in the long run.
And the reward for passing. Hill says there are two parts to it. The first is obvious, right? You get your goal, the money, the position, whatever it was.
Right, the material compensation. But the second reward, Hill insists, is infinitely more valuable.
Which is?
It's the deep, profound, life-changing knowledge that every failure brings with it the seed of an equivalent advantage.
Wow. Okay, that completely reframes failure. It's not just a loss. It actually contains the potential for future gain.
Exactly. People who really get persistence, they know this from experience. They don't see defeat as the end. They look at it, they analyze it, they figure out what went wrong, extract the lesson, and then they use that new knowledge to fuel the next attempt.
So their desire is just so persistent.
So persistently applied that what looks like failure to everyone else is just, for them, a temporary detour. A learning opportunity, which eventually turns into victory. And that, Hill says, is the huge difference between the few who make it and the, quote, overwhelmingly large number who go down in defeat, never to rise again.
Hill talks about a silent but irresistible power that seems to come to help those who keep fighting, even when things look hopeless. He calls this power persistence, it sounds like. more than just human effort.
It does have that quality in his writing, almost like a cosmic force that aligns with unwavering effort, whether you take that literally, mystically, or just psychologically. The observable fact is that persistent action does seem to unlock resources. Opportunities appear. Momentum builds. It attracts support, like the mastermind group. You refine your strategy because you're learning from the setbacks, and eventually you just wear down the resistance.
So his point is just absolutely firm. No significant success in any field happens without persistence.
Not just finance. Any calling. It's non-negotiable.
To really drive this home, Hill gives us some really colorful examples. He starts with Broadway, calls it the graveyard of dead hopes, but also the front porch of opportunity.
Yeah, it's a great setting to illustrate persistence. Thousands go there, right? Seeking fame, money, recognition. But only a tiny few actually conquer it. It demands just a brutal level of persistence.
And he tells the story of Fannie Hurst. She shows up in New York, 1915, with one goal: turn her writing into riches. And Hill makes this key point. The conversion did not come quickly, but IT came.
Right. She spent 4 tough years living the New York grind, working survival jobs by day, writing and hoping by night. And when hope inevitably fades, like it does in long struggles, she didn't quit. She actually describes turning that feeling into a challenge, talking to the city, basically. Okay, Broadway, you might beat some people, but not me. I'm going to make you give up.
And the scale of her persistence, the detail about the Saturday Evening Post, they rejected her stories 36 times.
The 36 rejection slips from just one publisher. Before she finally got accepted there, Hill points out the average writer, they'd quit after maybe 1 or 2 rejections.
Yeah, maybe 3 if they were feeling tough.
Right. Fannie Hurst faces 36 from one place, who knows how many others elsewhere, pounding the pavement for 4 years. Because her desire was burning hot and her persistence was just unbreakable.
And then came the payoff after she passed that test.
Exactly. Publishers who ignored her before, now they were seeking her out. The money started coming in. And the movie rights for her novel, Great Laughter, sold before the book was even out for $100,000, which was apparently the highest price ever paid for pre-publication rights back then.
So her whole struggle, her refusal to quit, it's a perfect picture of what persistence achieves. It wasn't luck.
No, it was a direct result of that sustained, focused effort. Broadway might give a sandwich to the talented person who quits early, Hill implies, but the real rewards, those are saved for the ones with that unstoppable persistence.
He gives another entertainment example, Kate Smith. Huge star eventually, but her journey also involved years of singing for free, or almost nothing, anywhere she could find a microphone.
Just like Fannie Hurst, right? She faced the challenge. Broadway basically said, here it is, come get it if you can take it, and she took it. She persisted, sang wherever she could, honed her craft, built an audience, until Broadway, as Hill puts it, just got tired of her being there, still singing, and finally gave her a major contract.
And when she named her price?
Hill says it was plenty. Her weekly pay was astronomical, way more than most people made in a whole year back then. And Hill uses her story to make this really encouraging point. There were thousands of singers, maybe technically better singers than Kate Smith, who failed where she succeeded.
Why?
They walked Broadway hoping for a break, but they give up. They had talent, sure, but they lacked the courage, the sheer persistence to just keep on keeping on until the system finally yielded to them.
Hill also looks at the Great Depression era, finds examples of people who lost everything but made amazing comebacks, fueled by persistence, like W.C. Fields.
Yeah, Fields was over 60, lost all his money, vaudeville, his old career was dead. No job prospects, most people would just give up, retire defeated.
But not him.
No. He was so determined he offered to work in movies for free, just to get a foot back in the door. He even had a serious neck injury during this time that could have ended things right there.
But he kept going, believing the breaks would come.
And Hill is adamant those breaks weren't chance. They were the direct result of Fields' persistent action, creating his own opportunities.
And Marie Gressler, same kind of story.
Similar situation.
Yeah.
Around 60, down and out, money gone, career looked over. But she actively went after the breaks and got them. Her persistence in just seeking out opportunities led to this incredible late-life success. Her biggest triumphs came long after most people would have stopped trying.
And Eddie Cantor lost his money in the 29 crash.
Wiped out financially. But Hill says he still had the essentials, persistence and courage. With those, plus, his talent and famous eyes, he exploited himself back to an income of $10,000 a week, which was a fortune then.
So Hill wraps up these examples by saying, If you have persistence, you can get by pretty well, even if you lack some other qualities.
That's his powerful conclusion from these stories. And he emphasizes, the only truly reliable break is the one you make yourself. And those self-made breaks, they always start with persistence, but the absolute foundation for creating those breaks.
Let me guess. Definiteness of purpose.
You got it. Back to the foundation. You have to know what you're persisting towards.
And he points out that most people just don't. If you ask 100 people what they want most, 98 can't really tell you clearly.
Right. They give vague answers, security, money, happiness, fame, but they can't define it, can't quantify it, and they definitely don't have a concrete plan to get there.
And riches or any big goal, they just don't respond to vague wishes.
Nope. Hill's crystal clear. Riches respond only to definite plans, backed by definite desires, applied with constant persistence. You need that precise target for your persistence to hit.
Okay, so we understand why persistence is crucial. How do you actually build it into a habit? Hill lays out 4 specific steps. He says they're simple, don't need genius IQ or anything, but they are absolutely essential.
Yeah, these are the practical nuts and bolts, the building blocks. First, a definite purpose backed by burning desire for its fulfillment. We keep coming back to this because it is the starting point. Know exactly what you want and want it so badly, so intensely, that the fire fuels you through anything.
Okay, number 1, definite purpose, burning desire.
Second, a definite plan expressed in continuous action. Wishing isn't a plan. You need concrete steps, and you have to act on that plan consistently, day in, day out. Continuous action builds momentum. Writing the plan down makes it tangible, holds you accountable.
Got it. Definite plan, continuous action. Number 3.
Third, a mind closed tightly against all negative and discouraging influences. This includes negative suggestions from, relatives, friends, anyone. You have to actively guard your mental space. Other people's doubts, their fears, they're contagious. You got to filter out the negativity that undermines your belief, your purpose.
Protect your mindset. Makes sense. And the 4th step.
Fourth, a friendly alliance with one or more persons who will encourage one to follow through. This brings back the mastermind idea, but focus specifically on persistence. Having people in your corner who believe in you, who support you, hold you accountable, give you perspective when you hit rough patches. That's invaluable for keeping your momentum and belief strong.
So purpose with desire, plan with action, closed mind to negativity, and a supportive alliance. Hill says these 4 are vital for success in any field, not just money.
Absolutely. And he says the whole point of his 13 principles, really, is to help you embed these 4 steps into your life until they become automatic, a fixed habit.
And the results of mastering these.
He describes incredible outcomes: control over your economic destiny, personal freedom, independence of thought, the path to riches, small or great, power, fame, recognition, guaranteeing those favorable breaks because you're creating them, turning dreams into reality, and maybe most importantly, mastering fear, discouragement, indifference, those inner enemies of persistence, the ultimate reward, the privilege of writing one's own ticket and of making life yield whatever price is asked.
Wow. Okay, now Hill throws in an example that, well, it might seem a bit surprising in this context. The story of Mrs. Wallace Simpson and King Edward VIII.
Yeah, it's definitely an unexpected turn, and he knows it's controversial. He chooses to look at this very public, very charged event purely through the lens of his philosophy. Definite desire, persistence.
So how does he interpret it?
He basically speculates that Mrs. Simpson finding this great love wasn't just luck or random chance. He suggests there was a burning desire underneath it all, and a careful searching at every step. He frames her main duty in life as finding and expressing love.
He thinks she knew what she wanted long before meeting the prince, even after previous marriages failed.
That's his interpretation, that despite those failures, she had the courage and the persistence to keep searching for what she truly desired in love. He even quotes Shakespeare, to thine own self be true. He sees her path as slow, progressive, persistent, and ultimately successful against, as he puts it, unbelievably long odds. He actually holds her up as an astounding example of applied persistence and an instructor in self-determination.
That's a strong take.
It is. He says she knew what she wanted and shook the greatest empire on earth to get it. Now remember, this is Hill's framing to illustrate his point about definite desire, persistence, and paying the price. He acknowledges the critics, the scandalmongers, but deliberately sets that aside. He wants to focus only on what he sees as their shared courage to go after a deep desire and express it openly, giving up everything else that was required.
And King Edward's side, how does Hill present that?
He frames Edward as someone born into this immense position, wealth, duty, none of which he really chose. Not truly free for over 40 years. And despite all the privilege, Hill suggests there was an emptiness that only love could fill, that his greatest desire above the crown, above everything, was for this love, this connection.
And Hill makes that point. Edward could have had a secret affair, right, like many royals before him, without giving up the throne.
Right. Hill says there would have been no complaint from either church or laity if he'd done that. But Hill argues Edward was built of sterner stuff, that his love was genuine, deep, sincere, the one thing he truly wanted above all else. So he took what he wanted, and he paid the price demanded by tradition and duty. The highest price possible, really.
So Hill wraps this controversial example by saying they were criticized, but they found life's greatest treasure, love, and claimed it. And he suggests we can all learn from their example in our own search for what we demand from life.
Exactly. He's using this intense personal story not to make a moral judgment, but strictly as a case study in his principles. Have a definite burning desire. Persist despite huge obstacles. Be willing to pay the price. It's definitely controversial, but as an illustration of demanding what you want from life and sticking to it, it's powerful in Hill's context.
Okay, so moving away from that specific example, Hill then steps back and asks these really big questions about persistence itself, like what's behind this power?
Yeah, he gets a bit philosophical, almost mystical.
Mm-hmm.
What gives persistent people this ability to overcome difficulties that just crush others? Is there some kind of spiritual or mental activity going on, something tapping into deeper forces? Does infinite intelligence, as he puts it, throw itself on the side of the person who still fights on?
These are deep questions. He looks again at Ford and Edison in this light, right?
He does. He spent years studying them. Ford, building this massive empire from nothing. Edison, with hardly any schooling, becoming the most prolific inventor ever, founding huge companies.
Yeah, GE and others.
Right. Hill says after really analyzing them, stripping everything else away, the one quality that stood out as the major source of their incredible achievements, it was no quality save persistence.
Not just brains, not luck, not background, just persistence.
That's what he concluded. Just relentless, unwavering effort towards a definite goal. And he broadens this out. He looks at historical figures.
Prophets, philosophers, religious leaders.
Exactly. People who achieved seemingly impossible things. And he concludes that for them, too, persistence, combined with focused effort and a clear purpose, was the major source of their astounding achievements. It seems to be this universal principle working across time and fields.
And he gives one historical example in incredible detail. He calls it one of the most astounding examples of the power of persistence known to civilization, Muhammad.
Yeah. Yes, drawing from a review by Thomas Sugru of a biography. And as presented in this text, Muhammad's story is just a staggering illustration of achieving world-changing results after profound failure and opposition.
Oh, so?
Well, the text describes him starting his mission late, around 40, no formal schooling, not seen as a mystic initially, and the reaction, brutal, ridiculed, called a lunatic, physically attacked by children, women throwing filth, eventually banished from Mecca. His first followers lost everything, exiled with him to the desert, and after 10 full years of this, 10 years of preaching and trying.
What were the results?
According to Hill's source. Nothing to show for it but banishment, poverty, and ridicule. By any normal standard, a complete failure after a decade of effort.
But he didn't give up.
He persisted. And this is the astonishing part. Within another 10 years, the situation completely flipped. The ridiculed outcast became dictator of all Arabia, ruler of Mecca, and the head of a new world religion that just exploded across continents.
What caused that turnaround, according to the text Hill used?
It mentions several factors. The power of words, the Quran's impact, seen as miraculous given his background, the efficacy of prayer, and the core message of man's kinship with God, this idea of equality that really resonated.
And the opposition wasn't just religious, was it?
No, it was deeply political and economic, too. The equality message threatened the established power structure, and his call to destroy the idols in Mecca, that directly threatened the city's main business. The pilgrimage trade fueled by those idols, so the businessmen, the capitalists, they were against him, too, which led to the banishment.
But it was after the banishment from the desert that the movement caught fire.
Exactly. Described as a flame which would not be extinguished. It drew people willing to die for the cause. The text even notes the relative humanity of their warfare later compared to the Crusaders, and how Christians adopted the Muslim idea of the university.
So Hill uses this incredible story from total failure after 10 years to world-changing success in the next 10, purely as an example of persistence.
Yes, as an illustration of how unwavering effort, Refusing to yield despite overwhelming opposition and prolonged failure, backed by intense desire and purpose, can achieve seemingly miraculous results. It defies logic based on the starting point. It's a powerful, if again potentially controversial, example of persistence changing history.
Okay, so given how incredibly central persistence is, Hill says we need to do some self-examination, take a personal inventory, figure out where we might be lacking.
Exactly. He calls the symptoms of lack of persistence the real enemies, the things that stand between you and what you want. He really encourages you to study his list, look at yourself honestly, face those weaknesses squarely, because knowing them is the first step to overcoming them.
All right, let's walk through some of these symptoms. Recognizing them in ourselves seems crucial.
Absolutely. So here are some key signs that persistence might be weak. 1. Failure to recognize and define clearly what you want. Can't persist if you don't have a target.
Right, makes sense.
2. Procrastination. Always putting things off, usually with excuses.
Yeah.
Direct opposite of continuous action.
Guilty sometimes. Okay.
3. Lack of interest in getting the specialized knowledge you need for your goal. Persistence isn't just banging your head against the wall. It needs know-how. 4. Indecision. Always avoiding choices, passing the buck. 5. Relying on alibis, making excuses for failure instead of creating actual plans to solve the problems.
Yeah.
6. Self-satisfaction. Hill's harsh here. If you're totally content, there's no drive, no hope for more, he says. 7. Indifference. Being too quick to compromise on everything, not standing firm for your purpose. 8. Blaming others for your mistakes. Just accepting bad circumstances as fate. You got to take responsibility to direct your persistence. 9. Weakness of desire. Which is huge. Often comes from not identifying strong motives that truly compel you.
That fire we talked about.
Exactly. 10. Willingness, even eagerness to quit at the first sign of defeat. Major symptom often tied to fear. 11. Lack of organized plans, especially written down where you can see them and review them. 12. Neglecting to act on ideas or opportunities when they pop up. Ideas die without action. 13. Wishing instead of willing. Passive hope versus active effort. 14. Compromising with poverty. Just settling for less instead of aiming for abundance. 15. Looking for shortcuts. Trying to get without giving fair value. Gambling. Shady deals. Persistence needs honest, sustained effort.
And the last one he lists, he gives it special attention, the fear of criticism.
Yeah, this one he sees as maybe the most damaging, because it often works subconsciously. It stops you before you even start. The fear of what other people, family, friends, the public might think or say or do, it can just paralyze your ambition.
He gives examples, right? People staying in bad situations, not pursuing education.
All because they fear criticism. Staying in unhappy marriages, avoiding further study because they fear being laughed at, allowing relatives to dictate their lives in the name of duty, sacrificing their own dreams.
Wow.
Refusing to take business risks because they're terrified of the criticism if it fails. In all these cases, the fear of what others think is stronger than their own desire for happiness or success.
Even refusing to set high goals.
Yeah, because they fear people saying, "Who do you think you are? Don't aim so high, you'll look crazy."
Yeah.
Hill even admits his own first reaction when Carnegie suggested he spend 20 years creating this philosophy.
Yeah.
His first thought was fear of criticism. His mind instantly started making excuses, all rooted in that fear of what people would say.
He felt like it was the world trying to kill his ambition before it even got started.
Exactly. And his sad conclusion, after studying thousands of people, was that most ideas are stillborn. They never even get a chance because they're never given that breath of life through definite plans and immediate action. And the root cause, he believes, often that fear of criticism. It kills ideas in the mind before persistence ever gets a chance to nurture them.
So this list of symptoms, it's not just a list, it's a mirror, a tool for really honest self-assessment.
Absolutely. To get a new grip on yourself by understanding these real enemies.
It really helps you see what you need to work on.
It does. Once you recognize these weaknesses, you can consciously work against them. You can focus on building persistence using those 4 steps, cultivating the habit, and actively guarding your mind against these saboteurs, especially that sneaky fear of criticism.
Okay, so wrapping up our deep dive into Chapter 9. The core message is loud and clear. Persistence, fueled by that definite desire and strong will, it's the absolute key. It's the force that turns intentions into reality, gets you through obstacles, lets you learn from failure, and ultimately achieve significant goals, financial, personal, whatever they may be.
And we've seen it's not some magic trait you're born with. It's a habit you can cultivate deliberately, built on purpose, a plan, continuous action, protecting your mindset, getting support, and crucially, recognizing and fighting against those specific weaknesses like procrastination, indifference, weak desire, and maybe most of all, that fear of what other people think.
We looked at some powerful examples too. Business titans, entertainers making comebacks, all refusing to quit. Even the controversial stories Hill uses, like Wallace Simpson or Muhammad, they illustrate persistence conquering huge odds in incredibly different situations.
And the bottom line is, the ability to develop this quality, it's within you right now. It's a skill you can learn, strengthen, and apply through conscious effort using the principles Hill lays out.
So here's a final thought for you, the listener, to maybe chew on today. Where in your own life are you facing a persistence test right now? Maybe it's a goal that feels really far off, or a plan that keeps hitting walls, or just a tough situation that's making you really want to quit.
How might things change if you started seeing that challenge not just as a roadblock, but maybe as that seed of equivalent advantage Hill talks about?
Yeah.
What if you combine that perspective with deliberate, sustained action, guided by your definite purpose, fired up by intense desire? Could that unlock that silent but irresistible power within you? A power you haven't fully tapped into yet.